So finding the cheapest car insurance is a little bit complicated. If you go on the internet and start researching this, you're going to find all different answers from all different companies. I've actually got 5 browsers pulled up from each different reputable source, and they all give different names. Who's the cheapest? Who's the best with full coverage? Who's the best with all those? We're going to answer those questions today. Who's the cheapest overall car insurance, and which ones are better for which scenario? Now, I don't actually believe 90% of what the order is in this case. It's kind of like playing a puzzle. And I started researching a little bit further with this. We went to Bankrate, we went to NerdWallet, we went to a couple other different carrier websites here, and we even did a deep dive with Chat to find out the best solution if you're looking overall in the US. Now, I think there's a lot to be said because a lot of these companies start showing up. Because we have an agency that does work in multiple states and we're able to check quotes from different places, we're able to see which ones are competitive and which ones aren't. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose based on price specifically. I get it. You're not supposed to base everything on price, value, coverage, all of those pieces play a factor. But today we're going to talk mostly about how to get the best price on the insurance. We'll go a little bit further as far as what the actual value is that you're getting for those prices. The reason a lot of these numbers are different is because they are doing different factors. When you're looking at a teenage driver versus an older driver versus someone that has a ticket versus the location that you're in, which probably plays the largest factor. If you're in Michigan, you're paying a totally different price than someone that's in Texas. Although actually they're close, but Texas is cheaper. We'll just put that out there. Nationwide was actually listed #1 in a few of these reviews, although I like Nationwide a lot and they're crushing rates right now if you have the right agent that can quote them, because they've recently backed off on the insurance in general and are slowly open those doors back up, which means certain agents can quote Nationwide and certain agents can't. Luckily, we've actually had our doors open up. We're able to work with them. It's been a really cool thing to have, but I don't think they're the cheapest. Although I think they're in the top 5. I don't think they're #1, which is what a lot of these websites said. When we combine home and auto, that's a different story. If you're doing home and auto, they're a little bit mediocre on the home as far as cost goes. And the auto, they're really good. The thing that happens to change is it depends on the policy you're looking for. If it's just auto only, they're going to make it paid in full and the rate's going to go up because they're looking to combine home and auto together to give that best rate. That doesn't mean they're not going to be competitive in that scenario. It just means that they're making it a lot more difficult because they're looking for a specific type of client. Now, USAA fell into the mix in the top 5, and they are one of the top companies and always have been in the last several years as far as one of the best companies as far as customer service. We've debunked that a little bit in previous videos to where that's fallen to the wayside a lot more in the last couple of years than before. And then they've also been really good at pricing, which is normal because they're limiting the number of customers they can have. It's only military or family of military. That's only going to be USAA. If you're not one of those groups, you don't qualify. The other part that we've ran into is I've almost every time beat their price when it comes down to shopping apples to apples. Now, it also, again, depends on location. I've gotten more comments on videos that we've posted that USA hasn't been so great in a lot of these categories that they're supposedly really good in. There's a debunk that you have to think about as well. I still would put them in the top 5 because they still hold a really strong candle to a lot of options. Progressive was in the bottom 5, probably closer to the 8th or 9th slot, but I think I would put them in the 2nd slot, mainly because they are just competitive in general. They want all the business in every piece of business, and they don't care what it is as long as there's a price that they can put with it. Now, that does mean that they're not competitive in some of the better scenarios to where you have a really good home or really good auto. They almost price themselves out, and they're a little bit more competitive for the non-preferred, where you might have a ticket, you might have a lapse in insurance, or you may have just some standard cars, or you want really good full coverage, but you don't want to put the house with it. So in those scenarios, Progressive gives these really big discounts on paid in full. They give discounts if you're shopping ahead of time. There's all of these extra coverages that they're trying to fight Geico on. So they're giving what's called a savings deductible. If you have a claim, you've already saved up the money to pay the claim. They're also giving warranties, which is something, in my opinion, they're following from Geico. And so now if your car breaks down, you've got coverage for that as well, which honestly really wasn't covered in the past. Most companies don't do mechanical breakdown as much as you would think they do. Gap insurance is available. It's really cheap to have. All those things, if you want those extra pieces, those a la carte parts, come with companies that are in these top 5 lists. Nationwide offers it, but they're a little pricier when you add all these little pieces on. And then Safeco, which is a big competitor, which isn't even in the top 10, They do package deals, which give all of these things, almost everything in one bundle, which is probably the better route for those that are doing more of the high end. You're looking for a home, an auto, maybe a motorcycle and a bike, and all of those packages that you're looking for. That's one of those companies that we're leaning towards. So number one, we're saying Nationwide. Number two, we're saying USAA. Number three, I'm leaning towards Progressive. Number four, Amica or Amica, however you want to say it. They're in the list on every carrier's site. I honestly haven't done enough research on them lately. I've done a video a couple years ago with them, and they're one of those companies that I personally see them like a farmer's insurance. They're very good at everything, and they're not excellent at anything. But in the right area, your price can be really good with them. I used to be with them when I was a kid. It worked out great, never had any issues. So there was all of those little pieces that Amica has, and I haven't had a ton of complaints with people on videos when we made videos about them. When we made videos about USAA or Progressive or Nationwide, a lot of these carriers, there's usually a lot of people because they are a larger company and because the smaller of the group. And because of that, they're not going to have as large of a sample size where people are having issues with them. In general, that means you're going to have a little bit higher customer service along with the lower pricing. They are just doing well with everything overall. They're an average, really good company, puts them in that fourth slot as far as one of the cheapest companies to look towards. By the way, if you are shopping for car insurance or home insurance or bundling all of that like we talked about, I'll put a link in the description below where you can quote more than half of these companies work with independent agents, where you can have one agent quote the majority of these insurance companies. That way you don't have to do all the legwork. You don't pay any extra for it. It's just one of those benefits. Instead of the company keeping that money in their pocket, they pay an agent to do the work. So if you are interested in that and you are shopping around, I'll put that link in the description below. Number five is going to be Geico. And I think Geico is crushing everything right now, especially because they've recently switched the way that they do insurance. So they're kind of a basic product in my opinion. They don't have a ton. They have what I mentioned, which is the extended warranty on the car, which is nice. Honestly, you can buy it through your car dealership. There's a lot of ways, but only paying a monthly fee is easier than paying the $1,000 or $2,000 that dealership's going to make you pay up front. Yeah, they mix into the price of the car, but you're paying interest on it, and it's just not worth it most of the time. You'd have to compare. If you are interested in me in doing a video on that, just let me know in the comments below, and we'll dive in. That's probably going to take me a few days to determine the difference between warranties. But Geico is very competitive. You go into states like Texas, you go into states like Virginia, you go into Michigan starting soon. You got all these main states that Geico is just really competitive. And they're not as heavy focused on having a ticket. So if you have a younger driver, if you have a ticket, something minor, once you start adding things up, they start to price themselves out. But in general, across the board, they're one of the cheapest insurance companies you're going to find. They also, again, like we just mentioned, like more of a high risk type policy. So they're going to be less expensive. The part that they changed up this last year is they started letting independent agents work with them directly. You're starting to see more of these independent agents allowed to shop with them along next side to Progressive, next side to Nationwide, next side to your Safeco, next to Travelers and Allstate and all of these carriers that you would want to shop with anyways. Geico's now in the mix. That's allowing some of the people that are really good fits to work with them. And because of that, Geico is no longer having to pay as much money for marketing because the agent's doing the marketing. They're getting the customer and they're finding the fits and they're putting them with the right company, which in some cases is Geico. That allows them to focus more on the product, lower the prices for the consumer, and not have to spend as much on marketing. So they're happy because they're making more profit, but also they're getting an agent that's going to do some of the work for them, handle claims, processing, all of those things that they normally would have to do in-house. The problem that you run into with them is they don't really offer a home product. I say they don't, but they technically do. They affiliate with other companies and carriers to offer a home product because they don't have their own in-house product. They have hundreds of companies that work directly with them, and then they just sell the home insurance through that as their own product. There's still a benefit because you do get the multi-policy discount if they find a good fit. The problem is most independent agents don't have the home product yet. So if you're looking mainly auto, Geico's going to be the next focus. Okay, Mark, your 6-1 has got to be State Farm. And honestly, I always put State Farm at the back end. They're good and really, really good in some states. They are not so good and very, very, very expensive in a lot of other states. And every company that you look at that does these reviews, guess who has the most money? State Farm. I honestly don't think that they necessarily sway the views and sway the votes in these opinions, but I don't think that they're ever in the top 5, at least as far as I've ever seen them be competitive. Now, don't get me wrong, they're competitive in a ton of states. I'll get back to them here once they come up here in the top 10. Travelers is probably closer to the top half, but because there's all these other competitive companies, they're going to be in my number 6 spot. Now, they're more competitive outside of your major states. When you get outside of companies like Michigan, get outside of Louisiana, you get outside of Texas, and you get outside of some of these states, because Travelers offers home and auto with most of these states. And the benefit is they haven't restricted all of them. They're starting to restrict zip codes and high risk, and the closer you are to the coast, they're just not a fit for that type of person. Because of the location, they're doing really good. The problem is they just went through a major claim in California with the wildfires. They were one of the largest insurers next to State Farm to have claims in that state. Because of that, rates are going to fluctuate a little bit. They're larger, so they're not going to take as big of an impact as a company like Amica, because they're a smaller group. If they have a big impact, the price goes up in a large increment. When you have a larger company and you have a big impact, it's going to be less, because if you spread the risk around, $10 here versus $50 here is a big difference in premium. Where they shine is they even lower their prices constantly. I've seen a lot of policies go down because the rate has decreased. We're starting to see that with a lot of these companies. Progressive has done it with a few. Safeco, like we mentioned, isn't in these. I don't know why I keep mentioning them, but they've lowered their rates in the last few months. Nationwide has lowered some of them. They've raised a few homes, lowered some auto. So you've got like different mixes of these companies and carriers trying to adjust those rates. It's like we talked about in previous videos, to where there was a lot of really high expensive policies and a lot of really low expensive ones. And these low ones are starting to come up because they're realizing that they should have raised the rates years ago. Because they didn't, they're falling behind and they're playing catch up with the other carriers' product pricing. That just tells you it's the time to shop. If you are watching this video because you're shopping, it is the better time to do that, because all of these carriers are starting to fight for the business, and because companies like Geico are allowing independent agents to sell their product, it's creating a huge market of where the competitiveness is there. There's still a handful of companies that are underpriced, which means for the next year to 2 years, you might get a really good deal. And there's a lot of companies that are lowering the price because they are starting to make profit again, which means even if you join a really good price and it goes up a little bit, you might find a better deal a few years after that, because of all the other carriers are making changes as well. Number 7, I'm going to put State Farm in there because I feel like they do need to have a really good spot. They do need to be in the top 10, not just because they're the largest insurance in the nation. There's a reason that is one, their branding. They push everywhere, everything, State Farm. They're the Chiefs mascot, like all of the things. They've got Jake, the State Farm guy, all of those things. They've got really good branding. And because of that, they've been able to do what most insurance companies haven't been able to. They've been able to move more towards a value product than a price product. So they're trying to push the branding that you are part of us for a reason. Just like Apple built a brand off of Microsoft. They're the ecosystem, and that's what State Farm's trying to be for the insurance industry. They've done a decent enough job. The unfortunate part is it is heavily focused on price. And you're watching this video because you're looking for the cheapest insurance. The reason State Farm is in that category is because even though they've focused a ton on branding and they've done really good with that, which means their customers are paying more for the same product, even though a lot of their quality scores aren't as high as some of the cheaper ones. But certain states, State Farm has always been a staple, and they are just competitively priced. States like my main state, Michigan, they almost never beat us. But when it does happen, it's massive. We lose by like half price. And so they are a product that you would lean towards in certain states. They're always that one that's the backup. If you want to check a major company, the number one largest insurer in the nation, that's going to be State Farm. Their product offerings are mediocre. You're not going to see them offer all the major warranties and the extended towing, the $3,000 and the vanishing deductibles. They have things like that in place in some states, but their biggest thing is their telematics. I think it's DriveWise. I'm not sure if that's Allstate or State Farm, but it's their telematics software. It's where you can do the test rating and get a good driving score. And if you do well, you do really good. That is falling behind as far as a really good option because people don't love the software in that. But there are a lot of major carriers that do give big discounts for those reasons. And State Farm is just one of them. Number 8 is going to be American Family. They're, again, a mediocre product, great company. So their company really doesn't have anything bad to say. There's just, in limbo. They've had good prices, they have very few complaints, and they have just your standard policies. They used to sell through Costco. There's all of these things that American Family has done. You may not even heard of them. If you haven't heard of them, let me know in the comments below. I'm curious. They are a mid-sized company, similar to Travelers, similar to Amica, and they just haven't been branded out there like everybody else. There was a time where they shined and did all of the marketing and all those pieces, but in the last probably decade, they just backed off. But that doesn't mean that they're out of the market, because they do sell a product and they do focus directly on customers, and they are a good company in those aspects. Falling in eighth, they're probably one of the few companies that you're going to toss out. You're not going to really think a ton about them. And if you're not finding those prices and you've gone through 3, 4, 5 companies and you're like, I just can't get the price I want, there you go. They're your backup. That's the next company that I'm going to look at as far as an option for us to get that best price for you. That's almost identical story to number 9, which is Erie Insurance. Erie Insurance is one of the bland companies, we'll call them. Good on products, good on customer service, good on price, good with most risks in most states, not great with tickets and accidents. Your Geico and your Progressive kind of own that world, sometimes State Farm as well. And they're just overall a good product. If you are looking for a cheap price and you can't find it with Nationwide or Geico or one of those major carriers, then Erie and American Family are your 2 companies that, hey, let's check them as well. If you got a marketing piece and that they say, call us, we've got most of the stuff, yeah, pick up the phone, dial them, chat with them, find out if it's a good fit. They do have a decent, okay product, a lot of complaints, a lot of good reviews, just like every other insurance company under the sun. That's another option for you to go. The last one is Allstate, and I don't know why they're in this group. They're on all of the carriers' websites. I don't think they're that competitive. I love them. They're a great company, and I've got friends that sell them. I sell them. I have them in our agency, and I've had good experience with them. They pay claims well. They have a really good reputation. They do focus on value more than they do price, which is why I say they're not necessarily the competitive. They're good for homes, in my opinion, in most states. And then their auto product in some states are good, but just don't see them show up competitive almost at all. It's one of those things where they are ahead of the trend as far as price goes, not so much as far as the technology goes. So they're more focused on making sure that everyone's paid correctly, claims are paid and handled correctly, which is what you're looking for, but they're not going to be the cheapest. They never tout it, they never focus on it, and it's not really the main piece that you're going to be looking towards. That being said, every other carrier said they're in the top 10. So there you go. Allstate is an option. Better company, in my opinion, than the last couple we just mentioned, as far as the quality of service, but not as competitive as far as the pricing. So Mark, yeah, you said a bunch of companies, and yeah, how do we know they're even real? How should we even trust you? Let's go over some of the numbers. I'm gonna use MarketWatch and NerdWallet because I do like their numbers because they're fairly accurate. If you really start researching these companies that do these comparisons, most of them you're gonna realize are just out of California, and they just use the numbers from III.com or all of these websites that just do localized searches. And they're okay to look at, but one state can't depict the rest of the US. Across that board, I like the fact that most of these guys do at least 100,000 per person, 300,000 per accident in their research testing. And they're doing full coverage, which means they do a 500 deductible. They're not doing the 1,000. They're not trying to cheapen the price to get you to fill out a quote, which is what all of these carriers and websites try to do, is try to get you to fill out the information so they can sell the data. We're doing it here for you, so you don't have to do all of those pieces. Again, if you're looking to not deal with 100 people calling you, that link is in the description below to where you can check prices with a local agent that can shop multiple companies. According to this, USAA was about $140 to $150 per month for a full coverage option. So we're looking close to the 100, 300, close to the 500 deductible, and essentially having a nicer car. Probably looking 2010 or 2015 on up. Travelers came in right around that 160 range. So that means that in some areas, different zip code, better insurance score, they're going to be more competitive. Depending on the state, I would expect them to even be 120 to 160. So it varies depending on the location more than anything in your insurance policy. Also, that profile that we create for you makes a difference. Geico, 162. I think they're probably closer to the 120 range for a full coverage option. They do add a little bit more because their risk is that higher profile, higher ticket, higher risk type person. So when you add the comp and collision on, it's going to be a little bit more expensive by having those options. Progressive, they're right around that $200 a month range. I think they're closer to the 160 range in my opinion, because that is the average I would expect. If you paid in full, now you're down technically into that 120 to 130 range. Yes, you're paying it in full for 6 months, so you're not really a 120 a month payment, but in general, you're getting $100 to a couple $100 off just for paying that in full. State Farm, it says 227 according to this, which is one of the higher of the group. You can see, like we mentioned, they are one of the largest. They're probably in the 220 range, in my opinion. They're selling more value than they are more price. So again, if you're looking for that mix, then State Farm might be that option for you. Cheapest by age, Erie Insurance, they're saying about $119 a month. If you're gonna do more of just a basic policy, West Bend Mutual was also an option in there. I don't know a ton about them. I know that they've been up in the charts, but they're about $140 a month. We've got Country Financial, which is very similar to American Family. We've got USAA at about $176, and then Geico $185. You're going to have a higher risk, so you're naturally going to pay more than what we just mentioned. Those are the prices that we're coming up with. Cheapest full coverage, we're talking about liability, comprehensive, and collision added into this. We're probably not talking about road service or towing or rental car. That's not part of a full coverage package. To be honest with you, full coverage is a made up word. We're not going to go into that. If USAA came in one of the best. So if you're an adult, that's usually 30 on up, 30 to 50. 50 is closer to that sweet spot. You're looking about $143 a month with them. Travelers, like we mentioned before, is about $160 a month with their typical policy. Geico, $162, Progressive, $204 per month, and then State Farm, the $227. They stayed similar in pricing when you get into the adult, when you add the full coverage onto that policy. So what is more of a basic policy for a younger driver, you're going to pay about the same for the adult that has the full coverage with the better options. But Mark, I'm looking for more of a basic policy. That's where NerdWallet helps me the most. I like their basic policy comparisons. They usually do really good. Geico, they put as number one. They're about $488 a year for just a bare bones policy. You're talking basic liability, maybe state minimums, maybe a little bit higher than that, and no comprehensive, no collision, no rental, no any extras. It's pretty cheap. You're about $40 to $50 a month. Now that's where you see all those ads and those commercials. You can pay $25. Commonly, those aren't true. The rates have gone up quite a bit. So let's just say $40 to $60 per month is what you'd be looking at. Travelers came in second for the lower basic policy, about $45 per month. So we'll say $50 to $70 per month. State Farm came in at about $46 per month, which is again, $50 to $60 per month. And then USAA actually came in one of the lower ones for this scenario. If you're looking for more basic coverage, they're averaging about $30, which means probably closer to $50 per month for more of a basic policy. You're right around $400 or less per 6 months. I want to put an asterisk with that because I'm using some of the data here that I don't necessarily agree with. I fairly almost never see the price that low. It's possible. If you're a young driver, it's near impossible. If you're a really good driver, you have good insurance score, which is essentially credit and claims history and a handful of things. Your profile is a really good fit. You're in a good zip code, which means there's low risk, not a ton of accidents and claims. Then yes, you could see that $40 a month range for insurance if you paid it in full. I've seen people under $300 for 6 months. It's possible and it can be done. Actually, that's with Progressive, by the way. The people I usually see, they're in here, they're like $79 a month. But it depends on the scenario, the state, the location, those pieces. That's where working with that independent agent is going to give you that advice where they can shop all these companies so you're not having to do all that extra work. So how do you save the most on that policy? Because now we've talked about the companies that give you those cheapest options. Who's going to give you the best price and offer the most discounts? Because discounts play a large factor. If you can get a multi-policy discount, if you can get a good insurance score discount, if you can get a claims-free discount, if you've had insurance with the same company for 5 years or more, there's a ton of different discounts that you need to be aware of. Your next step is to watch my discounts video here that will give you the major discounts that you can qualify for. If you're trying to figure out the coverages that you should lean towards, there's another video that's going to be very helpful. It's the Car Insurance 101. That's going to go over some of the coverages that are going to help you get the pricing that you want, but also get the coverages that you need to have as well. Either one of those videos will be helpful. Otherwise, I'm Mark with Think Insurance. I'll see you in the next one.